The number of journalists behind bars reached a global high in 2022. That's according to a new report from the non-profit organization Committee to Protect Journalists, which says that 363 reporters have been imprisoned worldwide as of December 1st, 2022. According to the report, at least 56 journalists were imprisoned across Africa in 2022, with Egypt being the top jailer. The report also revealed that Iran, China, Myanmar, Turkey and Belarus are 2022's top 5 jailers globally. CPJ and other human rights organizations, including the United Nations, have continued to call for the release of the imprisoned journalists. Meanwhile, 24 journalists and media workers have been killed in Nigeria between 1992 and 2022. Well, to discuss the report further, I'm being joined on the news by public affairs analyst Chude. Thank you very much for joining me on the news. Now, let me start by getting your reaction to the newly released reports by the Committee to Protect Journalists. Are you surprised by the number of journalists that were imprisoned in 2022 alone?
No, I'm not surprised, but I'm disappointed in the sense that one major barometer for determining the freeness of a country or society is dependent on the way the media is being treated. And so when you have a country, if you have a country where you have relative press freedom, then it speaks well to some extent about the level of freedom available in that country. Obviously, and this is essentially because the media in a repressive regime, the media is usually the first, line of attack, because it is the media that is the interface between those who govern and those, and the people that are governed. And so when the media does its job properly, the media will report on what is happening. And so in a situation where you have a repressive regime, and the media feels bound, duty bound to report on the activities of the repressive regime, then obviously the media is asking for trouble. And that is why you see that the attack against the media has increased. It simply tells you really, especially if you're talking about Africa, it simply tells you that there's a pushback, against democratization and against the ideals of a democracy, which involves the freedom of, the press, which involves, an effective and humane rule of law system, and then all the other things that democracy brings with it. And so what that tells you really is that it would appear that Africa once more is taking a backseat when it comes to issues of democratization. And really no surprise, because if you look at what is going on, especially in West Africa, where you have military regimes now, coming back again, in the sub-region and in the continent in general, like what is happening in Sudan, then that will give you an idea that it would appear that some of the gains that we have made in the past few decades, it would appear as if these gains are being rolled back.
Well,
And it is sad.
let's. Sorry to cut you here, but let's come down to Nigeria now. Would you say the rate of clampdown on the media has reduced tremendously? And how would you rate press freedom in the country?
Well, generally there is a feeling of some level of freeness when it comes to the press. The Nigerian media has always been very vibrant, even in the period of a military dictatorship. It has always been difficult for the military, even under that period, to constrain the media so much, because the media naturally felt duty bound to oppose military dictatorship because it is an aberration to democracy. So there was, a feeling of being right, and doing it and doing the legitimate thing. But under a civilian dispensation, it is a little bit different, because the dilemma is that the dilemma is that you have a civilian administration, a so-called a democratic administration that is also taking a playbook from the military era and is doing exactly what the military is doing. So to some extent, we could say that vibrancy of the media is still there. But that is not to say that attacks, rather than reduce the attacks on the free press in Nigeria, rather than reduce, has actually gone up. in the sense that it would appear that there is a democratization or decentralization of repression. In those days, it used to be that the federal government would have issues with the media when it comes to the kind of reports they carry. But today, it is now governors of states are now taking matters into their hands. If you go to Kano, for instance, you are critical of the governor of the government of the day or the governor in yeah, they detail the police to go after you in a Boeing. We have had, a Boeing is also particularly bad. What is going on there? And then other parts of the country, like what happened in Cross River State too. So rather than reduce, I think it has gone up. The harassment of journalists has absolutely gone up, and it is a reflection of the state of our democracy.
I'm afraid I have to cut you here. Well, public affairs analyst at Chude, thank you very much for joining us on the news and for your time and contribution.